The HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast is powered by Cornerstone Gundog Academy. CGA is the world's most comprehensive online gun dog training resource. They've got over 160 instructional videos that includes everything you need to take your 7-week-old puppy to a finished gun dog. Visit cornerstonegundogacademy.com to sign up for the free preview module and begin your training journey today. Cornerstone Gundog Academy, the most advanced gun dog training resource on the web. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. SoundGear is offering a 35% discount to the HP Outdoors listeners for their instant fit industrial and shooter products. You can head over to soundgearhearing.com and use the promo code HPOWP35 to claim your discount today. All right, welcome to episode 168 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast. I'm your host, Josh Palm. We're your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. You can check us out over at hpoutdoors.com. You can find us on all of the great podcast directories out there, iTunes, Stitcher, all the good ones, Spotify, anywhere you can find quality podcast content, you can find our show. You can also catch us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're a Facebook user, you can head over to our listeners group, check out a bunch of like-minded hunters in there, talk shop, and also talk with my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, buddy?
What up?
I don't know.
Good to be back, man. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, we've had a couple weeks away, which it's kind of been nice to just focus on a bunch of other stuff. I've had 1 million sick kids in my house, so it's been very busy keeping everyone healthy as possible. And I know you're
kind of opposite from last year. We were battling that daily for like 13 months straight, it seemed like. Yeah. So anyway, back in the saddle, which is good. Got a full slate scheduled here for 2020, which is cool. And we're excited to be working with a bunch of great companies again this year. And there'll be more to come about that as the year goes on. But as you heard, SoundGear right now running a awesome incentive for our listeners where you can get 35% off that fit industrial or shooter products. Using that code HPO35. So make sure you head over to soundgearhearing.com, check them out, and also all the other hopefully incentives and things that we'll be able to bring to you guys this year. Exciting stuff. Pumped up about it. Yes, sir. So the cool thing about that, those are the instant fits, and those are electronic. So the 15 decibels of amplification, 93 decibels of suppression. You can hear the wings beating over top of you, and you can shoot and keep your ears safe. So really cool stuff out of SoundGear and coming back this year.
Yep. Good deal.
And they are working, trying to work something out on customs, but right now their process, they can't do it. So stay tuned for that.
Yep. Okay, so on to this week's order of business. We're talking horrible hides that hunt. And I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I will say that, we've talked a lot about concealment over the years. And while it's one of the most, if not the most important thing next to being on the X, it's still one of those things where every time, something's not going right, it's probably because of your concealment or your hide, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some of the worst hides you've ever had where you were actually still able to be successful. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially that's what I was thinking, because there's so many times that, a river might go up overnight and you can't be in the exact spot you want to be, and it just throws things off. Just a lot of weird things that happen, and you just have to deal with it instead of, cashing in that hunt and going home. If you still want to spend time out there, I put a post up in our Facebook group and asked people to talk about some bad hides they had that turned out successful. So we're going to talk about that, and then just some that we've had. Because, if we get out there and something's not
exactly perfect how you expected, we're still going to go hunt, right? We're still going to figure out the best possible way to bag some birds. So
So let me ask you
I
this
thought,
question. If you reflect back on some of the hunts that you've been on, proportionately speaking, how much time do you think is spent like staring and talking about placement of decoys versus staring and talking about or trying to improve the cover and brushing of your blind or your boat or whatever?
I would say when we first started, it was probably a lot more on the decoy placement, and now it's a lot more on brushing because usually right when we get to the field, we might have a layer of vegetation on our blinds, but then it always gets packed on, right? So we're spending a lot of time doing that. But when we first started out, it was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, you know, inherently people are lazy, right? And I think people get hung up on decoys and kind of stuff like that, but like brushing and concealing yourself is hard work. And
Mhm.
it's something that a lot of people I think would rather not do. And I think because of that reason you find like anything else to do when you're hunting to not be the one brushing the blind or not have to deal with it. So like, you're off talking about, well, decoys need to be here and that furthest one needs to be there and there's too many look in this direction, whatever it is. But because of that, sometimes you end up in hides that aren't maybe as great as you'd like them to be.
Yeah, usually the decoy placement comes out after after some kind of issue is going on with the hunt anymore, to where that was always a main concern. But let's get started out here, and let's go back to, I don't know, it's been multiple years now, but when we started hunting geese around here, and it's kind of crazy to think about because usually we have a ton of snow, and these last couple years have just been weird, right? Like now we have, I don't know, maybe a half an inch of snow on the ground, but I
You
remember.
got snow on the ground up there?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah.
We
Just
haven't even
starting
hardly
out,
even seen snow this year. I think we had one snow event, I will call it.
I think this is our third, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's still not a lot.
No, so, and I mean, 3 snows, 2 melts, and this is probably going to melt because we're going to be in the 50s next week. So, but when we first started, we had our blinds, but we didn't have snow covers, right? So, we we would get out to the middle of a field where birds want to be, and you have a giant white field. You have your dark geese, and then you have brown blinds out in the field. And it was, we would kill birds because we would try and, dig in a little bit and throw snow on top of it, but we still had the doors that were brown. And just thinking about those days, it makes me laugh because now I see that and it just makes me cringe to see. But one situation, if you can't afford a snow blind or snow cover, you see a ton of people with that Christmas paint.
Yeah.
That, it sprays on and that stuff ends up flaking off. So it's not going to hurt you in, the next season when you need green or brown. But, just thinking back to those days, it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my very first hunt ever. And, back in those days, it was like trying to cover up in a field with a burlap bag or, sitting inside the wood line. That was pretty common. And while we weren't hidden great and, birds didn't really want to work, certain situations, what we did learn is that you can really, and this is common now, but again, when you didn't know what you were doing at the time, like I learned how to manipulate the bird's eyesight as they're approaching the decoy spread. So like, allowing you to have a strategy when you're setting up the decoys to divert their attention off of your hide. That's something that is very common, but for an experienced hunter, but for a new hunter, when you're reading these things, it's like, oh, set your decoys in a J pattern or set your whatever, in an X or whatever it is. And then typically you put yourself right in that like kill spot because I want to shoot birds in the face when they're coming right down on me. And we were learning that we were not having success doing that because birds were seeing us. So, or they didn't want to finish, as close to the wood line that we were sitting in or whatever it was. So learning how to use the decoy spread to manipulate them to get them into a comfortable position where we could actually shoot them and not be seen was something that we really kind of learned by trial and error kind of in those early days.
Yeah. Totally agree. And there's actually one of the stories that I'll bring up is doing exactly that. But going through some more that we have done and still are learning to this day, just, some of the best setups we can get. There's a few marshes around here that we'll take canoes back in, and, having an open canoe when you have vegetation, and think about it. You have vegetation to stand on. It's actually floating vegetation that you can fall through. Mm-hmm. So we end up, taking the canoe, pushing it up onto the vegetation and standing in it. So if you have your decoys, maybe 2 guys in a canoe, and you're trying to get this done, it's very difficult to add a full blind, right? So there's been multiple times that we've done this and hunted these spots, and it's a pain in the butt to get to and get set up, but you can be very successful. And that is one of it's always in the back of my mind, like, we are not hidden, even though you have cattails and stuff, and you try and put the netting up and put all so are where the birds want to be. And even though you don't have the best hide possible, you can still be successful in those situations. And a lot of my stories have to do with boats, either a boat or a canoe. Probably need to figure that out sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, I think, a lot of the ones that I recall are just back from more of the early days where I didn't really have a boat or a canoe. So I was kind of like, just tucking along banks the best I could, or like, along a field edge or something, and just trying to make that work with natural vegetation that was there. And those were just some of the hardest hunts, because even though, you try to use the brush that's there, like, it's usually not enough, and you still have shadows and things like that you deal with. But, one of the big things that we still struggle with today is, whether we're hunting an A-frame blind or on a boat or something like that, is that area in between, where the birds get over top of you and they can see the dark spot down in the middle, like you're talking about, and that's really hard to conceal. And, I'm 6'4", so my head sticks out of all that stuff a lot. So it's hard to, like, be comfortable and stay concealed and all that. And that's still a real big challenge, but something that, like when we were up in Canada, we were really pulling the blind. We were physically pulling it closer so that maybe our hat was just out, and with the brush around it seemed to work pretty good. But, those little subtle things were helpful to kind of make that a better situation.
Some of those hides up there were the best I've ever been in.
Well, yeah, we did have a couple of really good ones up there too.
There's no doubt. I want to read, there's a guy from our Delta chapter, and his name is Mark, and he wrote in, and I remember this was a few years ago when we had a real bad drought, and I remember hearing about people doing this and they were successful, but when you drive by the actual spot and see it, you're like, how can you make this work? So low water levels on the lake causing about 100 to 150 yards of bare land before the water's edge. They got there early with shovels and layout blinds, dug some holes just big and deep enough to put the blinds in so the doors would open flush with the ground. No stubble, just mudded up the blinds a little more to try and blend them in as best as we could to the bare ground. Set floaters and field decoys around us and killed birds. Definitely not ideal, but it worked out. And I remember going and driving past this, and that mud was not ideal to be walking in. It wasn't a hard bottom mud. The lake is fairly stagnant and just could really, get stuck in it. So when you think that that's not an option, take a shovel, make sure you don't have the shadows, and where someone thinks that might be a horrible hide, I think that would actually work out pretty well. And it did for them.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And I'm not sure I would have, thought to go that route. That seems like a ton of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can get down in the dirt, I mean, that's, for a long time, you'd see people talk about that in fields, hunting these fields where the vegetation's real low and tight. And they're always like, well, if the farmer will let you trench down into it, or find ruts and set your blind inside the rut, kind of thing. So if you can get closer to that ground level, that's where it's at.
Yep. The more and more we learn, the more, shadows are bad, even with A-frames. But
correct.
So another friend, Jesse Morris, who's from Killer Chefs, friend of the show, we used camo fishing tubes to get out to a little mud island, then covered up with muddy burlap just to shoot some canvasbacks. It worked out really well. So again, muddy island, and they had just, burlap, like you were talking about, just cover up with that. Seems a lot lighter, and you're shooting cans. That sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, sometimes I think we're definitely guilty as waterfowlers sometimes of overthinking things. Mm-hmm. And, if you can keep it simple, a lot of times that's the best way to go.
I'll tell you one horrible hide, another one that we had, and this was a river rising. We got there, this was 2 years ago, and it was supposed to be a field hunt next to a river, and a little bit of water was laying there. It's kind of a clay bottom field. I don't know how the guy's corn grows because it's really hard, but it rose up, and this is where I took my friend Mel, and I was like, yeah, just get some knee boots. Well, he took about 3 steps into the field, and, we're not even close to getting set up yet. And he's like, yeah, that water just went over my boots. So wet feet right away. We had the panel blinds and just set them. I mean, they were, which I always end up having panel blinds in like 2 or 3 feet of water, it seems like, which is not ideal because those things get heavy when you brush them up and they get wet. But ended up shooting birds there. We got out. We got on a tree line and set all the decoys and got under the edge of the branches and didn't even have the back of the panel blinds set up. We just used 2 out front, and not what we were expecting, but adjusted and made that work.
Remember you talking about that hunt where Kimber was like sitting in the water, essentially, like she could barely like get up out of the water?
Yeah, that was this year, but last year we did the same thing, and I actually put her, she was like 40 yards behind us on a fold-out chair in a high spot right next to a tree.
Oh, gotcha.
Let me see here. I'm going through reading stuff.
Well, you're not prepared for this.
I am, but I'm just bringing it up.
You should bring it up.
All right,
you're not
so
prepared.
I should have copied and pasted, but I didn't. So Braden Scholl, Sand Beach. He built a driftwood blind. Decent day. Birds coming low. Picked us off pretty easy. They shifted the decoys heavy to the sides, and it started working a lot better. So,
boom.
There's a tip right there. If you are in a makeshift blind that you're not totally concealed, move the decoys out to where the birds are focusing on them. And even if you end up doing some pass shooting, that could save your hunt.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. And, that's something that you should pay attention to all the time. Even if you've got a great hide, you may need to have that kind of decoy deployment just because you're hunting birds that have been pressured, right? And they've seen spreads and they're, so it might not just be your hide, but like, that's a great tip all the time. And, getting comfortable shooting birds left to right or right to left and all that kind of stuff is important. And depending on how many guys you hunt with, knowing when to call the shots so that everybody can get shooting on the birds, just like that. That's all a little nuance that'll help you be more successful, whether your hide is bad or not great, or if you're in a situation where birds have been pressured and, you're having trouble getting them to finish and they're just skittish, that kind of stuff. All of that can help you be a little more successful.
Yes, sir. Dallas Barber wrote in. He said, hunted a water depression 4 inches deep in a poor winter wheat field. Just brushed our blinds like normal with grass from nearby fence line and spread as much brush around us as we could to extend our blob to look a little more natural, and it worked like a charm. So, really short winter wheat, and this is something that I have taken notice of. A lot of new guys want to have a little bit of separation in layout blinds, And I think that can actually hurt because it just has more shadows. And what he's doing here, it seems like they got closer and put enough vegetation in between them to where it just looked, like a blob, right? There's no edges, which, will throw the shadows and like you said, work like a charm. So if you can blend in, make it look like one blob, one little hill, one little bump in the field, it's a lot better than having, 5 or 6 different jagged edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree with that. Tighten them up for sure.
I like that one. And I think that might be why, A-frames do so well for bigger groups. They're just, you have some edges to worry about, but that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me find one here. Going through. Yeah, I should have copied and pasted, but I didn't.
Not ideal, Daniel.
Here's another one with a burlap blanket. A sugar beet field. Nothing to brush in, nothing to cover with. We tried a burlap blanket and ended up shooting some. And I think there's a lot of people that won't even hunt these short fields, right? Or dirt fields or whatever it is. And I think that if that's where the birds want to be and you can get a burlap blanket or some kind of grass blanket set up, I think you'll be good to go. Yeah. And it's proven on these.
Yeah, I agree. Just it doesn't take a lot. It just has to be the right stuff, just cover the right areas.
All right. And the last one that I have out, James Elledge, he's from Duck Camp. Hunted a tule patch on a refuge in Northern California a couple years ago. It was about 6 inches to a foot high. Didn't matter too much at first light. Side conversation. First light, you can get away with just about anything, right? We bagged a few early, but when the sun came up, we were very exposed. There were thousands of ducks in the sky. Side convo, that doesn't happen here, including a pair of cinnamon teal that at first light we thought were divers.
Side convos.
I know. And then they were wanting to work our pond, but we had such an awful hide. The two of us ended up splitting up and spreading out about 200 yards from each other. It seemed to help, and we scratched out our 7-bird limits, but it took till about 11:30 a.m. and required some long passing shots and some missing. So, they ended up breaking out of their hides and spreading out to get the passing shots.
Yeah. I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. Do what you got to do. I like it.
It is nice, that first, before the sun comes up much and you can just be a little more free with your hide until you actually see how bad it looks from when the light comes up. It always bothers me.
That's a fair point because, the lighting changes throughout the morning. So the way that the spread looks and whether your hide looks changes, and where that sun's out on the horizon is going to have a different appeal to the birds if they're that early than what it will at, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning when it's up a little higher. You get shadows that are different and all that kind of stuff. So, if something that you were doing was working first thing and not working anymore, think about those kinds of things. And maybe you got shadows casting over somewhere that you didn't first thing or whatever. Don't be afraid to make some adjustments at that time, with your hide and whatever you got going on.
Here's another one, Dylan Calhoun. I didn't have this one. Dylan. Riverbank that was mud for 40 yards before you got to water. The water fluctuates a bunch up and down, so digging in wasn't an option. Ducks wanted in this one spot, though. We built a natural blind that was big and ugly, and I would have told everyone there's no way it would work, but we killed them for a few weeks out of that blind.
Yeah, well, I mean, being on the X is the most important thing, I mean, you get away with a lot more stuff when the birds definitely want to be there.
Yeah. And I say, I feel like this reaches our group a lot more. It's more, public land or places, you probably not a leased property where you can build a blind, right? It's going in and not knowing exactly what to expect. Even if you do scout it and you see what it's like, you might get out there and really have to adjust what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the way it is because if you're public land hunting, you might get to where you want to go and somebody's already there. So now what do you do, right? You got to be creative and kind of got to try to figure it out. And, you know,
here's a question for you.
Okay.
Craig Lutz, barren mud island that had covered 2 weeks prior, but it was on the X. Yeah, that had covered 2 weeks prior, but was on the X, so it didn't matter.
Where'd the cover
I don't know. I don't know. That's what I was wondering.
Okay.
But it didn't matter too much. Laid down, covered myself with a decoy bag, and had an awesome hunt. So do you think how important do you think a decoy bag or a burlap sack would be in these situations? Do you think you could lay there without them?
Probably. I mean,
you think?
I think you probably could. I mean, depends on what you got on.
And decoys around you?
Yeah. I mean, you know, like if you're in full camo, is it that much different than covering yourself with a burlap bag?
Maybe just less edges.
Maybe. But, I mean, you know, there's no rigidity to a decoy bag, so it's just going to fall on you the same.
Right.
But I mean, maybe you're in a spot on the island where there's like a tree that casts some shadows, or you're able to like set some decoys. You know, like I always like to use, silhouettes for that. You know, try to pack them around where I'm hiding to sort of give a little higher profile right around me, where I can kind of try to disappear into that stuff. But I mean, it's no different than hunting snow geese, where you got like that recliner chair that you're just laying down in the spread. You know what I mean?
I do.
You do.
I do know what you mean.
Okay. Pretty neat.
But you got thousands of decoys around you.
Yeah. But
or hundreds.
But you pack them in tight right where you're laying.
Yeah. JB Brown, I live in Nevada. Every week I have to hide under a sagebrush. I haven't learned how to hide in a sand dune yet. So there's one that, just go and get under the level of the sagebrush and kill birds.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you got to do. Bottom line. At the end of the day, you do what you got to do with the conditions that you're dealt.
So really, I mean, I wanted to bring this up just to show people, like, don't just can a hunt because things aren't what you expected when you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't kill them on the couch, right? So if nothing else, you'll learn from what you try to do and try to do it better the next time if it doesn't work. And if it does work, now hey, this is something that we hadn't previously considered, and maybe it unlocks other spots that you've been overlooking because you were thinking that you might not have been able to get a decent hide on that spot. So
here's another question for you. How far away do you think you should place a kayak or canoe, if possible, and hunt a spot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it can be close if you can cover it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're saying like it's gonna be laying out on the bank kind of thing, exposed, I would put it as far as reasonably possible. I mean, if you need that boat to recover your birds, then placing it 300 yards away, it might not be realistic, right? But especially if it's like a big red Coleman or whatever canoe that you're using, like depends on what it is, right? But I mean, definitely it's something that if birds have been working that area, right? Like if they're resident birds or something that have been around for a while, a canoe or something laying there out of nowhere might cause you problems. So it might be less of an issue if you're talking migratory birds. But I mean, yeah, I always try to get it as far away as possible or cover it up, at least. I don't worry about it quite as much if I'm hunting like divers that are going to be down on the water. But if you're talking, puddlers and stuff that are going to be up in the air over top of you, yeah, I would definitely pay attention to that.
There's I remember seeing pictures. I think it was Scott Marquis and Ryan up there in Maine, and they'll take their kayaks out or canoes and flip them over and sit down back behind them, right? Yeah. So that's their blind, and then they use the seagrass or whatever's floating around there, put it on top of it, and they do well on that way.
I was gonna say, that's brilliant. I mean, that's where it's at.
Also not red canoes.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's Yeah, I mean, that's really a great way to do it. And it will help you probably if you're, got wind and stuff. It might help protect you a little bit there. So, yeah, I like that for sure.
Definitely on the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you have any other horrible hide stories?
I don't know if I have any stories per se, but I mean, I think every hide, no matter how horrible or not horrible you think it is, like, I think a lot of people, don't really have a true appreciation for just how white their face or how bright their face will look when you're looking into the sun. So, I mean, I know that's conventional wisdom to have the sun at your back, but like sometimes you can't do that for whatever reason, or it's got to be at your side or whatever. So, like, if your hide stinks, make sure that like it stinks a little bit less, and try to really hide your face or find a shadowy spot that you can get your face behind, because that will definitely stick out more than maybe some realize. Even it's particularly new hunters who want to see birds and want to know where they're at and all that kind of stuff, and they're looking around. And that's a real quick way to get picked off. So just my last thought on that.
I like that one. And we use spinning wing decoys, and you can see that white flash from a long ways away. So imagine how easy it is to see your face when those ducks get closer and they're actually looking for danger.
Yep.
Don't pie face the ducks, man.
Preach, brother.
Preach it. So what else is going on?
Not much, man. I mean, overall, I've had a really uneventful hunting season. I've just not hunted as much as I have done historically, and got the baby, got kids sick every time we turn around, baseball, that kind of stuff. So 2020 is gonna have to be a little better for me than 2019. That's all I gotta say about that.
I agree. I wanted to say we put our girls in ski lessons, and the wife, she was actually in ski club in high school, right? So you would assume that she knows how to ski decently well, like enough to teach kids.
Is she a snowboarder?
But she's like, no, she's a skier. And she's like, I want you to learn how to ski so you can teach the kids. And I was like, why don't you do it? Oh, I just think you'll be better at it. So last Sunday, I put on skis for the first time.
First time ever?
First time ever.
Whoa.
I snowboarded all through college, right? And
I didn't know you were an ex-gamer in college.
I was, yeah. Yeah, nice. I dated a girl that was semi-pro.
Whoa, semi-pro.
She got
big time.
She won a lot of competitions and stuff that I would never try to do. All the trick stuff. But anyway, yeah, did a lot of snowboarding. So I get on skis, and I think I fell 4 times in 6 runs. That's it. So I was feeling pretty good by the end of it, and
pretty confident, huh?
I'm pretty confident. So it's every Sunday, and going back this Sunday, we should have more snow. It was kind of slushy, kind of icy. It was raining, so difficult conditions to learn in. But I was going down with the girls by the end of it, and
the kids, the kids did good,
helping them. Yeah, they were going down to Bunny Hill by themselves by the end of it, nice. Without any help. So they're excited about it, like super pumped to be involved in it and doing well with it. So it's just cool to be part of, and I learned how to do it. So hopefully, sooner than later, they'll be going down to big hills and we can all do that together. But
yeah,
if you live in an area like this where there's plenty of snow, I figured it's time to learn. And I was only moderately sore. My shoulders hurt because it was funny. I went in and, Ty Wilson, he's a good skier, and he was up there. His daughter's taking lessons, and I was like, man, are you going to teach me how to ski? He's like, yeah, I'll teach you. So I come out and he's like, where are your poles at? I was like, I didn't get any poles. He goes, go back and get some poles. So I went in and I asked the guy, I was like, can I get some poles? He's like, this is your first time, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, I don't recommend you using poles. I said, I'll take the poles. So I got the poles, and they were actually helpful, like getting up and just sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
But also there was a couple times when I wish I didn't have them because I tried to use them and it jacked my shoulder back a little bit, and that's what caused majority of the soreness. But overall, I'm a skier now and ready to go out west, essentially.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
not really. Have you ever skied?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I destroy the slopes, bro.
You just shred the gnar?
Oh, yeah. I ski, snowboard, also a ski club native. Yeah, you know.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, bro. Don't at me with that.
What do you like doing better? Boarding or skiing?
That's a fair question. I think as I've gotten older, I like the skiing better. Just because it's easier to sort of navigate around like the lifts and stuff. You're not like doing the whole one leg like deal. But I grew up on the lakes. So I did a lot of wakeboarding and stuff. So snowboarding kind of came pretty easily to me. So I've had my most spectacular falls on skis for sure. But I haven't done it in probably a couple years since the last time I skied. I mean, skiing is just pricey, bro. I mean, it is expensive.
It is.
I'm just not into that kind of throw money at that. So, but it is fun.
I tell you what, it was $40 for a half day with rentals, so it wasn't too bad
per person.
Well, we paid close to $500 for 6 weeks of lessons for the two of them. So two of them total, but then $40 for me a day. So
you just need to buy your own skis, dude. Just let's go.
Well, I wanted to see if I could actually stand up on the things before I
committed. But I mean, how long before we get the Dan Hershka skiing downhill podcast?
Probably 1 or 2 more weeks, and then it might come out.
Nice.
But no, it was fun.
The van looks sick with the skis strapped up on the roof, just like getting after it. Everybody with their North Face on and whatever, just after it. Yeah, I see it.
We didn't even take the van.
Don't lie to me. The people deserve,
the girl skis are
the
so
people deserve
small.
the truth. Don't lie.
We definitely took the truck, which have new tires and new wheels on it. I finally got rid of those.
I saw you got some new shoes. You were complaining about those for a long time.
Dude, you should feel like the inner bead on 3 of those rims are like razor sharp. I don't know how my tires didn't get cut. So anyone with the Rock Warrior Edition TRD wheels, when you change your tires, have them check that because the inner bead was totally gone on it. And then the refurbished one that I bought a year and a half ago had about a 4-inch crack into the actual wheel that was leaking air nonstop. So we're back on the road and about to break 200,000 miles on that puppy.
Yeah, it's a good run. And I assume by you getting new wheels and stuff, you plan to keep her for the long haul?
Yeah, I'm going to try and get 3 hundo.
Nice.
I think.
Yeah. That's pretty neat. All right.
Pretty neat.
I think we've
story.
blabbered about our personal lives for plenty long here. So I think that's going to probably do it for this week's episode. And I think we're just going to kill it there.
We can kill it there. One more thing. I haven't said that in a while either. One more thing. Our Delta Banquet is on the Valentine's weekend, Saturday night. If you want to join, we still have tickets available. Not many decoy packages, but if you want one, might be able to get you one. So give me a shout.
That's going to do it for this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. If you're new to the show, head over to iTunes, check out some of our past episodes, and while you're there, leave us a 5-star rating and review. It's the best way for like-minded hunters just like you to find our show. Check us out on social media, check us out over at hpoutdoors.com, and anywhere you can find quality podcast content. That's going to do it for this week. Till next time, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.